Imagine living in a world where your entire life was dedicated to military service beginning at age 7, a world without art, music, travel, trade, or literature. This was the reality faced by many people living in ancient Sparta, a militaristic society focused only on military strength. Here is a list of the reasons why it wasn't easy being Spartan. Number 1. Spartans had to prove their fitness, even as infants. Infanticide was a disturbingly common act in the ancient world. But in Sparta, this practice was organized and managed by the state. All Spartan infants were brought before a council of inspectors and examined for physical defects, and those who weren't up to standards were left to die. The ancient historian Plutarch claimed these ill-born Spartan babies were tossed into a chasm at the foot of Mount Taygetus, but most historians now dismiss this as a myth. If a Spartan baby was judged to be unfit for its future duty as a soldier, it was most likely abandoned on a nearby hillside. Left alone, the child would either die of exposure or be rescued and adopted by strangers. Babies who passed inspection still didn't have it easy. To test their constitutions, Spartan infants were often bathed in wine instead of water. They were also frequently ignored when they cried and commanded never to fear darkness or solitude. According to Plutarch, these tough-love parenting techniques were so admired by foreigners that Spartan women were widely sought after for their skill as nurses and nannies. Number 2. Spartan men were not allowed to live with their wives until age 30. Spartan society didn't discourage romantic love, but marriage and child-rearing were both subject to some peculiar cultural and governmental constraints. The state counseled that men should marry at age 30 and women at 20. Since all men were required to live in a military barracks until 30, couples who married earlier were forced to live separately until the husband completed his active duty military service. The Spartans saw marriage primarily as a means for conceiving new soldiers, and citizens were encouraged to consider the health and fitness of their mate before tying the knot. In fact, husbands who were unable to have children were expected to seek out virile substitutes to impregnate their wives. Likewise, bachelors were seen as neglecting their duty and were often publicly mocked and humiliated at religious festivals. Number 3. Spartan youths were ritualistically beaten and flogged. One of Sparta's most brutal practices involved a so-called contest of endurance in which adolescents were flogged, sometimes to the death, in front of an altar at the sanctuary of Artemis Orthia. Known as the diamastagosis, this annual practice was originally used as both a religious ritual and a test of the boys' bravery and resistance to pain. It later devolved into an outright blood sport after Sparta went into decline and fell under control of the Roman Empire. By the 3rd century AD, there was even an amphitheater constructed so that scores of tourists could cheer on the grisly ordeal. Number 4. Food was intentionally kept scarce and poor fitness was cause for ridicule. When a Spartan man completed the main phase of the agoge at around age 21, he was elected to a syssitia, a military-style mess where citizens gathered for public meals. To prepare soldiers for the strain of war and discourage poor fitness, the rations doled out at these communal dining halls were always bland and slightly insufficient. Spartans were renowned for their devotion to physical fitness and proper diet, and they reserved a special loathing for overweight citizens, who were publicly ridiculed and risked being banished from the city-state. Wine was a staple of the Spartan diet, but they rarely drank to excess and often cautioned their children against drunkenness. In some cases, they would even force halot slaves to get wildly inebriated as a way of showing young Spartans the negative effects of alcohol. Number 5. Surrender in battle was the ultimate disgrace. Spartan soldiers were expected to fight without fear and to the last man. Surrender was viewed as the epitome of cowardice, and warriors who voluntarily laid down their arms were so shamed that they often resorted to suicide. According to the ancient historian Herodotus, 2 Spartan soldiers who missed out on the famous Battle of Thermopylae returned to their homeland disgraced. One later hanged himself, and the other was only redeemed after he died fighting in a later engagement. Even Spartan mothers were known for their do-or-die approach to military campaigns. Spartan women are said to have sent their sons off to war with a chilling reminder: return with your shield, or on it. If a Spartan trooper died in battle, he was viewed as having completed his duty as a citizen. In fact, the law mandated that only two classes of people could have their names inscribed on their tombstones: women who died in childbirth and men who fell in combat. Situations were really harsh in these times. Living as a man in ancient Sparta was a feat. What are your thoughts? Would you like to be a Spartan warrior? If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe for more. Goodbye, everyone.